Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Yourself?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's all good. All good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you in London right
Yeah. Yeah, I am actually. Yeah. It's sort of the west side of London.
now?
So
Okay.
like, yeah, no, it's nice. We've had a few thunderstorms today, which has been fairly exciting.
Is that pretty typical? You guys have a lot.
Yeah, well, no, not really, but the world's changing. So maybe it is. It's typical this year.
That's true. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. We are so excited. So I have a couple notes here. Um,
Yeah, sure.
just
I
for
don't
our,
have any notes.
oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Literally
You
nothing.
just, it's all in your head. So I am one of the administrators for the group Beyond Sanditon.
Uh-huh.
We are a rapidly growing global fan base, and primarily we're trying to get more Sanditon in whatever form that may come.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and also just learn as much as we can about the production process and
Hmm,
everything
hmm.
behind the scenes. So awesome people like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
music. We're just really excited. So I read on your website, you've been doing this for a long time. You started young, right?
Yeah. When I was 7 and 8-ish or something, I started playing the clarinet. And that was sort of intro into performing, but also writing, because very early on when I was playing, I was interested in working out what it was that we were playing and how that might be relevant to making new things and all that. And I was very aware of music. I sang in a choir, and we used to sing music from all ages, but quite a lot of new stuff as well. So I was very aware that music wasn't something that was there and had always been there. It was a fluid thing, and it was something that you could join in with in writing or performing, but especially writing. I thought that was really a fascinating side of things. I mean, I wasn't like writing anything good for a long time, but it was in my mind that that was like definitely the thing. And I was excited when the composers would come in and work with the choir or the orchestra or whatever I was doing at the time. So it was kind of really cool to do that, I think.
So what made you go with the clarinet as your first instrument?
um, for those that don't know.
Yeah, I'm a band kid, so I know what all the instruments are.
Yeah,
But that's pretty
that's
awesome.
actually interestingly, this is a small one. This is a C clarinet, which you don't get many of them. You get a lot of it in Beethoven.
Yeah.
But it's I'm teaching my 7-year-old to play.
Oh.
And so it's she can't really she can't really manage the big B flat one.
No.
It's sort of, she has to like rest it on a table just so she can like sort of, it's a bit heavy. Anyway, so I've got the thing. The clarinet, I did want to play the sax. I was into, my parents used to play a lot of Bruce Springsteen and Eurythmics and like 80s stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was really into like Clemens on the sax, and I don't really know who played sax in some of those Eurythmics tunes, but like certainly I was really aware of the sax as an instrument that could be a little bit kind of nice.
Oh,
So
yeah.
and then it wasn't, I was in a very classical music school at the time, so they were like, oh yeah, well obviously you won't be playing that, but you can play the clarinet. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, at least I can move on to the sax at one point. And I do have a sax, but I start with the clarinet. I play a lot of jazz on the clarinet actually.
So how did you transition from being a kid playing music to it being your career?
It's yeah, it's quite a long transition in that I actually, when I finished high school, I went to study physics as a sort of major, sort of real science school
Yeah.
in London. But the reason why I really wanted to study in London because my sister was there, and she was going to lots of gigs at the time, and I just sort of assumed that if I wanted to carry on music and doing it properly, then I had to be in London. And then my elder sister, so two sisters, so my elder sister was a really into theatre, and I she also had some film friends, and they kind of caught wind that Julia's brother Dom might be up for writing some music for free for their student pictures, for their student films. So I did that, and we did sort of 3 or 4 shorts together, and then a friend of mine had a contact who was, his auntie was mates with someone who knew someone who made ads.
Oh my gosh.
And so again, I was the cheap option that could, like, scrabble, cobble together something for 500 quid or something.
Yeah.
And so things, and didn't have too much equipment, but I'd always been quite into music on a recorded music, and being able, whether it was on sort of computer or on like tapes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of kept up with I always had something to record music, so it was quite an easy transition to go from doing that and then having a system that could support the video as well, and you could sort of compose. And then I did lots of theatre for a bit. I did loads of, like, I mean, London's got a great theatre scene.
Right.
Have you spent much time in London at all?
I've actually never been to London. So I live in the United States, but London.
Where exactly are you?
So I'm in Kansas City in the Midwest.
Oh, right. Yeah, cool.
So
great,
right in the middle of the country.
Well, incredible jazz history.
Oh, why not? Right in the heart of jazz. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Count Basie.
Yeah.
Phone. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, underground.
Lester Young.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've got some really cool underground jazz places. You literally go underground and they play jazz, and it's just a really big culture here. So, and just me being in music from the time I was a kid, started with piano, flute, and band, and drum major, the marching band, and drum corps, and singing. So it's just always been a cornerstone of my life. So I was like, got to talk to a composer, and I'm so
yeah, right. But you are in a good city for that. Do you play now?
So I still play flute, sometimes at church, but primarily I'm more singing.
So, oh yeah, cool, great.
Yeah, it's not anything I do for a living, but it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
So
yeah, excellent. Like choral, like in a choir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with Sanditon?
Well, that is a bit of a convoluted story, actually, because I live on a street, and obviously it's late in London. This is London. Yeah, it's not. No, and on my street lives Ruth Barrett, the amazing Ruth Barrett's best friend, Natalie. And I got quite matey with Natalie because, we are both around quite a lot during the day, and I see her. She's an actress and I'm a composer, and like people are around, we're not heading off to work at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So I was quite matey with Nat, and she was like, oh, you must meet my friend Ruth. She's really cool. I think you'd get on with her. And at the time I was orchestrating things like movies and things. Wow. And so I'd done quite a lot of that stuff. But the rest of the time I was literally just doing TV commercials, like ad music and stuff. So I'd sort of, and then it was funny because I reached out to Ruth at one point. I said, oh, we should meet up. And she never got back to me because she's like so busy and like sort of being awesome. And so I just kind of let it go. And then the guy who I'd been orchestrating with put out this thing of like, oh, there's this Ruth needs someone to help with some orchestration for this period drama. And so I obviously dropped her a line because I was like, well, obviously now you can't ignore me because I'm also Nat's friend. And it was funny because we just got on with the gig. It was quite hardcore because I think I stepped on in probably episode 2 or something for series 1.
Yeah.
And she was already on this hugely mental schedule of going up to Scotland every week to record with the band who play on the soundtrack. She's not someone Ruth doesn't cut there's no corners cut anywhere. She was going up to Scotland and like taking her laptop on the train and sort of doing this stuff, and I could see why she needed some help because there's a lot of music, and it was actually turned out quite a music heavy show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and seriously emotive, and everything was, and then once it was in, you couldn't not have it. Oh, it was like that. The precedent was set of this is a music heavy show. So as basically as the episodes went on, it was like, well, we're going to need loads more. But the themes were there, so that was I mean, she'd basically won by that point, but there still had to be lots written. And so she was scribbling stuff down and mocking stuff up. And then I sort of gradually turned from the person that just sort of takes exactly the notes that are written and makes them playable for these guys who she was pegging up in the train for in Scotland.
Oh my gosh.
And then it was a little bit like, oh, and can you flesh this out, because you know at this point we've got to tell this story and stuff, and I was getting a little bit more into the actual you know, I was paying a little bit more of attention to the film at that point, whereas before it had been like, oh yeah, okay, that's in, but I mean she's done all the hard work to make this happen, so I just can make it work. And then so as it went on, and then there was a lot of so that was the first thing I did with Ruth. And then the first time I met her in person, we've spoken like loads on the phone and stuff, and it was at the wrap party in Soho where I was like, I think that's Ruth. So I just went over. I was like, yeah, it was.
Oh my gosh, you hadn't
but
met.
It was really weird. It was the kind of relationship that you had in COVID, but it was way before that. It was like we were working remotely before anyone was thinking of doing it, you know.
Oh right, it's because
But I suppose COVID wasn't very hard for like what we were doing. I mean, you know, obviously not in terms of managing the work and the gig. It was we were already like the forces were all kind of disparate anyway, and people were like sending in recordings, and we were getting people to record remotely before. So it was sort of quite a well-oiled machine by the time you really had to do it.
It sounds like, well, because you mentioned that, let's see. So on your website, you said it was an inspiration for anyone who wants to find out what real-time pressure was like on a project. So did you have just a small amount of time to get the work done?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because it wasn't like write all the music and then at the end they'd like sort of have a little listen to it and they'd throw it back and you change it and stuff, and then in 3 months' time they're going to mix it and dub it. It was like that dub was then the week after. So it was just quite tight. But that's actually really normal now. I mean, I at the time it was I'd been doing loads of theatre and loads of TV commercials, and TV commercials are insane deadlines, but you only have to write 30 seconds of music. So once it's over, it's kind of over. And if you might have started the gig on Monday, but by Wednesday it's done and dusted, and it's, you know, see you later. But with this, it was like you were recording on Wednesday and then Friday, and then the other film was coming in the next day, the next week. So it was just like constant. But that's actually was a good little period, because pretty much everything I've done since alongside Ruth or you know, with her has been like that. So, you know, all her stuff on Law and Order actually makes Sanditon look like a quite a generous production schedule, because it just has to be quite quick turnover. But then there's a few people involved, so it's like Ruth has a wicked team. I mean, I would say that because I'm part of it, but she has handpicked some like class people. And we've got a rap party actually this week for Law and Order that finished like a few weeks ago, and awesome. But it's just the music team. I mean, it's nothing to do with anyone. Anyway.
That's a great team. You guys did all this work together. And so what was the inspiration for the music? Did you read the script? Did you see anything filmed and they were like, here you go, write the story for this scene? Or like, did it vary?
Well, actually the thing is with Sanditon, on the first series, I was orchestrating it. So actually Ruth was doing all the music, really. And I would come in when she had either done a fairly polished version, or it was like a sort of a sketch, you know, in sketch form. And so at that point, you know, the way we have is quite nice. I mean, she'd send me like the music file, a Logic file. She works in a music software called Logic. We sort of open it up and you have all the instruments running that side and down the side, and so you can sort of comment on things as well. So she'd say at the top, she'd say this bit is where this is where she gazes into the fashion boutique, the clothes shop, and this is like, you know, magic time or something. Or, you know, as the series went on and we were getting closer to a snog, you know, it was like this is nearly that moment. This is nearly kiss time. And then finally, obviously, when it happened, you know, and so actually, more than even chatting on the phone, we'd just like sort of correspond within this sort of like musical language within this music program. So it's actually kind of cool, and that has carried on ever since, which is kind of cool. And then there were a few moments as well where she'd be like, I don't know, what, throw something in here. You know, we just want, we really like this music. Everyone's really liking the music at this point, but we just need something more, some more layer, another layer of emotion or pull or attraction or excitement or sadness or some kind of like, you know, emotional layer that needs to come into this scene. And so then I'd come into that, but actually for that, I mean, unlike some other more recent shows, but I wasn't writing cues from scratch for that. She was doing the whole lot. So it was really nice actually, and actually it was a really important time for me in terms of being part of her team, because I was coming on board at like a sort of the music was 3/4 done. I was able to actually get really into the way she was putting music together, which has helped me on subsequent shows, because I can sort of feel where she might have gone, and that it would be part of the sound. She has a very particular sound, and anyone on the team is like going for that sound. I mean, we're bringing our own things in, but you know, this is her gig, so it's kind of cool. But it really is like it's really fun collaboration. And actually, Sanditon one was my first taste of that in TV music. A lot of things I'd done had been people saying, "Oh, can you write this cue? Yeah, send it over," and they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. All right, it goes in," and this sort of stuff. Whereas this was like, okay, cool. What have you got to add to this pre-existing piece of music? And then that was a real collab. You know, that's cool.
Well, and I noticed like in the theme, and I think so Ruth wrote the theme, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very driving. It's very rhythmic with, you know, guitars and strings and, you know, percussion. Definitely, it almost feels like you are in a carriage.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. Yeah.
I mean, you know, like what was that sort of the theme that she was going for? Like, we're headed towards a really exciting story. I mean, what was she trying to tell with that theme?
Ruth is just totally into music that drives forward. She is like that as a person as well. She's like just always looking forward. She's like literally so driving as a person. So I mean, if you listen to most of her music, it has that in it. It might be a very subtle driving force, like a little ticky thing or so, somewhere it's happening, or a little shaker or something, or a guitar thing just going, but like there's always that thing. So I think like, I mean, yeah, I don't know what was going through her mind when she was writing that particular thing. I don't know whether she had a picture or a thing or something. Maybe she read it some footage. I don't know. You'd have to do that with her. But all I know is that as soon as I heard that, it just sounds like her, and it sounds like the right thing for a quite. I mean, Sanditon was like progressive in a really interesting way. It's not progressive in a sort of, there's no pop tunes or anything. It's not like. Right.
It's not like
Bridgerton or anything.
I was just going to say Bridgerton.
Yeah, it's not like that. It doesn't feel like that, but it feels pop culture in another way, and it's got a modernity to it, and that's what you know, like original Pride and Prejudice like just didn't. I mean, that in itself has a sort of timelessness to it, but what Sanditon had is like it just felt a bit modern. The scenes were shorter, you know, everything was just like, you know, just a bit upped, and like even like the you know, the colors pop and stuff, it's like exciting like that.
And that's consistent with what you said her style is. It's very, forward movement, very driving, because I did notice, now that you mentioned it, those scenes were a little shorter. Some older period dramas, a scene will go on for 4 or 5 minutes, and it's kind of,
I mean, that's potentially indicative of TV as in the whole.
True.
Things are and our sort of attention spans sort of nosediving.
I wonder if that's intentional now, because we as humans, like however many years later.
I think the whole thing is a little bit like that. I mean, I think totally, that things just are a bit more, cut.
Well, especially right, advertisements, and you've done
exactly.
30 seconds,
30 is long now, it's like, it's like a sort of, but so I think like, certainly that thing. But what's really interesting about that theme tune is how the key change and how the key centers shift around as well. And that's another thing, that obviously it's a musical device to bring in excitement, and it could well cut really nicely with the title sequence. But again, just like the driving force of the drums and the guitar and the sort of the strings sort of powering it along as well, it's the key changes power it on as well, because it's just like, okay, done with that, next key, key. It's like, it's the same as the Simpsons, the Simpsons intro. It's exactly the same device. I mean, I think I'm not sure you ever get a full bit of the tune in the same key. It's like always interrupts it a little bit, and you have something, and then you're into the different key. Desperate Housewives theme tune does that as well.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, that's those two are Danny Elfman things, and he's like obviously the king of like excitement and drive, and I think Ruth would probably agree with that.
So who is your favorite composer? Like, movie score wise, who's your favorite?
Movie score, I think I have to go with Gustavo Santaolalla.
Okay.
Because he's so do you know much of his music?
I don't. His name doesn't sound
okay. So his big movies, he got an Oscar for Brokeback Mountain, Ang Lee's Brokeback Mountain, and that's like really, really famous, like
very epic. Oh yeah.
It's like really gorgeous tune. And he also wrote for the Babel, Motorcycle Diaries, The Last of Us, the computer game and the TV series, few other things, but he's really cool. He also had a really wicked sort of tango band at one point. He's the Argentine guy.
Okay.
But I really like his stuff. I also like Alberto Iglesias.
I don't know him.
Okay, so he's written scores for all Pedro Almodovar's movies.
Okay.
So yeah, he's well worth checking out, actually. A really beautiful string writing. It's quite conventional. He's not like a sort of modernist in any way. But it sounds really good. And so those are the I like that stuff. I mean, obviously like John Williams and Zimmer and stuff, and all those guys are absolutely incredible. I probably learned more. I sort of did this BBC thing when I was very young, when we sort of went to learn from like an established film composer, and I went to study with George Fenton, who sort of wrote music to Gandhi and Planet Earth and all these kind of things.
Oh my gosh.
And he's very he was very gracious with sort of musicians on the way up, and younger cats. And so he was like, yeah, come around to my house and hang, and we'll just talk about music. And it was that sort of thing of, I mean, I really liked his music anyway. I actually really like his music. I've got like a whole pile of his scores that sometimes, if I'm sort of in a bit of a sticky situation, I'm like, what would George do? And then literally just like look it up.
He's kind of been like one of those first people that gave you kind of
I mean, exactly. And I think that's really important in the creative industries, that you find people who not just it's not just about their music that you really like, but actually you sort of could live their lifestyle and you could have their outlook as well. Because if you were to like meet, say you were to meet, maybe meet your idol, you know, someone that you've always wanted to like, and you love their music, and then you meet them and like there's no way, like you don't get on or something, or you're thinking, oh my God, what a horrible life this guy had, or this is so depressing,
Yeah.
or like I could never do this.
Yeah.
Well, I had like the opposite thing with quite a few key people that I met on the way, where there was this great composer, Paul Clark, does loads of theatre music in this country and dance and stuff. And he was very early contact of mine, and I went to hang with him, and I was just thinking, yeah, I could have your life, you know. And that was kind of more like that than, yeah, I could write music like you, because I didn't think I could. And then yeah, and the same with Fenton. Actually, I mean, to the same extent, like Ruth, really, you know, she's sort of, you know, good few stages ahead of in her career than I am, and but I see the way. Yeah, I mean, we hang out all the time, and we were at a party on Saturday together. We're really good mates now, but
it's great.
And it really sort of helps you along when you kind of meet people who are doing what you do, but maybe at a higher level. But you're like, yeah, okay, I could definitely. This is a life I could lead, you know. And you've kept the values. You still love it or something, or
yeah,
you still have time. You still have time for family and friends, and you still are interested. You still go to gigs and stuff. Like I was at a gig with another composer, Dominic Shearer, on Friday night, who I've worked a little bit with, and that's just a really nice thing, because we just go to gigs together, and that's like that. I mean, that's, you know, without it sounding cheesy, that's sort of what it's all about. You know, just keeping a love for music and playing and stuff. I mean, I've always had a jazz band, and I still have a band and stuff, and that for me is like a really important thing to keep going, even though I sometimes have to send a replacement clarinetist if the deadlines are coming in thick and fast, but it's still there, and it's still happening, and it's still something that I can just go and do, and just make some music, and we can just improvise, and that's a big part of it as well. Ruth would talk about that as well, improvising, and a lot of people traditionally have come in film and TV have come from jazz and rock and pop, because of the nature of the improvising, the improvisatory element of what's required when you're just composing and just coming up with stuff and trying things out. And, you know, John Williams was a jazz pianist before he wrote Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you know, everyone's like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who are like just into tinkering and playing and experimenting with music and stuff. I guess like Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross as well, are big inspirations in the way that they can go from something like Social Network to you know, quite aggressive modern scores. And then oh damn, I can't remember the name of it now. What's that one where she's like the nurse in the sanatorium, and she's like oh yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a really it's a score. It sounds like it's a Hitchcock score, you know. Sounds like Bernard Herrmann. Yeah, it's really cool,
very nerve-wracking and tension building.
Yeah, and all entirely recorded live, interestingly, during lockdown. It's really interesting, actually. They got Alan Meyerson, who's like the engineer for a lot of these big movies. They got him to come up with a way that all the musicians could just record their bits and send it in. So they got all, like, you know, LA's greatest and whatnot to just send in their scores.
Oh my gosh, put them all together.
Yeah, and put it all together, and they use this really cool like software to put it all together, and it worked really well, actually. It worked really well, and you there's no way you could think. But those guys are really cool. They're quite they're quite inspiring. I like Giacchino as well. He writes really cool music. Michael Giacchino and stuff. I worked quite a lot with Dan Pemberton a few years ago, orchestrating some of his stuff.
Wow.
Things like Birds of Prey.
Okay. Yeah.
Like Harley Quinn and stuff, and that was cool. And that's really like, I think I've really benefited from working with quite a few different people, actually.
Sure.
Because you just sort of pick up a little bit of how they work and their process, and
yeah,
that is actually really useful. Yeah.
What was your process like for seasons 2 and 3? I mean, because it was during COVID. So
yeah. Well, actually, I was actually more involved in seasons 1, but my role was a bit. It was quite funny actually during season 2 and 3. So I became the. I did a lot of source music. The source music is as opposed to score. It's like when they're in the ball and they play a bit of like 18th century music. So I did loads of arranging of that stuff.
Oh wow.
And that's like that's like really in my wheelhouse. That I love doing arranging of like pre-existing music and making it work for like a totally different band that it might have been written for.
How do you do that? You take a piece, and how do you
you take a piece and essentially you listen to it. I mean, obviously that's what you do with music. But rather than actually working from the music, my method tends to be, for most of that, is a transcription basis of just taking the, sort of listening to it and then transcribing it into something that could work for things. So maybe you'll take the chords down and you might literally just make what's called your lead sheet, where you have like the chords and the tune or something. You might make that. You might literally just play it in. I mean, like you could see, like all of our studios really look the same, but you have like,
wow,
keyboard,
oh
like,
my gosh,
drum machine, kind of synths, tape machines, like vintage guitars, and like the guitar station over there for doing all those bits and bobs, and more guitars on the wall stuff. So there's quite a lot of like tools that you can sort of use to just get yourself going with one of those things. But essentially, with that, the source music, the ball music, that's like like other 17th, 18th century composers have written. What I would do there is like literally just take it down on the piano and then work out who's going to play it. And well, I mean, by the time I was doing that, I kind of knew. So it was going to be cello, violin, and harp. It's an amazing player, Phil Holland, who plays all the fiddle stuff on Sanditon, and so other crew for some of the when it's everyone's playing together. But a lot of the solo lines is Phil, and she also is really amazing. I think her first study actually was originally harp. So, and she's amazing Celtic musician as well. So she can play really amazing Scottish, Irish style stuff, and with the harp and everything, and it sounds so real, it sounds so legit, and it sounds so expressive. You know how that music like is.
Oh yeah, well, and I was going to say that I noticed almost like a Celtic lilt / undertone to some of the music a couple of times. I thought, well, this is interesting because it's an English show, but there are characters that have a Celtic.
And I mean, I know Ruth knows more about the sort of actual musicology behind using like Irishy, sort of Scottishy, Celtic kind of stuff. But the long and the short of it is that a lot of the music around that time, folk sounds around the British Isles, was inspired by a lot of Celtic stuff as well. So it's not like this is and like Welsh music and stuff, they have bagpipes as well, and like it's like all this, you know, everyone's got this, everyone's got these kind of sounds in their palette, so it totally worked. But it's also Ruth's really into that sound as well, like that freewheeling Celtic fiddle sound, and on the cello as well, and it comes into quite a lot of her music in a way that you might not expect. I mean, there was she did Big Beasts for Apple, it's a nature show, you know, really good. Have Apple TV, you've got to watch it, it's amazing. 10-parter, like the biggest animals in the world, like doing awesome stuff and fighting to survive against all odds. And there was this episode of these grey whales, and they were making their way up the coast of America from sort of California, and they ended up in sort of, I don't know where they ended up actually, maybe Portland or something, I don't know. Quite high up, I don't know.
Canada.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I've been up there.
And they were going up, and it was really beautiful towards the end, and there was this really nice scene, and suddenly I was just like, oh yeah, the Celtic fiddle's out. And it made so much sense because it was gracious, it was emotional. It wasn't describing anything Celtic in any way, but actually, I mean, you know, how much American fiddle music sounds like very derived from those kind of sounds. I mean, it is more than Celtic. It's like a universal language of folk musicianing, and that's something that certainly brings together Team Ruth, that we're all into not just folk music, but sort of music of the people, like sort of social music.
Yeah.
Music that people, not just like orchestral stylings and, you know, like formal, you know, classical Western styles. Is people are really into like folk and rock and pop and stylings that are really immediate and really soulful and expressive, like blues and Americana and roots. We're always talking about, can we get more roots sound into this thing? I mean, literally to the point where I just buy like these old guitars from you know, America, and they sound like really rootsy, and it's got that kind of, and everything is a bit like that. It's just like give it a bit more feel, dirt, grit, you know, even if it's actually quite a nice cue or something, it'll be, but where's the edge to it? It doesn't really, it'll lose its meaning if it's just frivolous and fun and hasn't got any edge to it. So it'll be like, okay, well, what about like some drum in there, and then like maybe just distort the drum a bit or something, just to give it that like give it an edge or something, you know.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a folk revival going on. People, especially, I mean, I don't know about your corner of the world, but people here, I mean, myself included, I mean, I grew up with parents who were big on the 60s and 70s music and singing, and that's just, you know, what I grew up with from them. But definitely, like that guitar on your wall, that acoustic, that looks exactly like she's had it for 50 years, and that guitar has the most beautiful, deep, soulful sound.
This one here.
Yes, it looks just like that. It's got a little bit of etching.
I mean,
it's beautiful. It looks just like hers, and 50 years later, that guitar still has just the most full sound I've ever heard on a guitar.
1957 Gibson.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's probably like, you know, but that's like, you know.
Gosh, a Gibson, goodness. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, I mean, people
but it is, you know, I mean, it's one of the ways to sort of inject like history into the, you know, history and meaning and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you know, they don't all sound great, but like, even if you just sort of like feel like you're part of this thing, and like, it's like using all the analog synthesizers in some of the more modern scores. It's just kind of, they you know, they've just got sort of a different edge to them, and they sort of have quirks, and the tuning is sometimes a little bit out, or they distort a bit in, so you know, they might not play really evenly over the octave or something. And then like, yeah, it's just and it's also just like kind of fun to just have all these instruments around, like a sort of, this is a Vietnamese xylophone, like a sort of bamboo sort of type of thing, you know. And like,
the sound isn't coming through. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's a beautiful sound. Yeah, just silent on my end.
Yeah, amazing. Wow.
Okay, sure, it's beautiful. That's amazing though. I mean, there's so many.
But yeah, you have to just collect these things. They're so inspiring just to have them knocking about.
Yes. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you so much for talking to us. A couple things.
Pleasure.
One, we would like to share this with our group at some point. With your permission, we would upload it to YouTube if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
if not,
fine,
totally fine. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I forgot to ask you, Shaker Neon. I checked out your music. I love it. Are you guys fresh? Did you just start? Because I only saw
much. I mean, actually, do you know, that was this kind of a just we just doing it before lockdown, and then it became the most saving project of lockdown.
Really?
That I could just make music with my best friend Tommy, and we could just do this thing, and we could just get other singers to sort of send us their stuff, and we could, you know, just have some really, really good fun with some tracks. So yeah, no, it's still going. We're working on some new music at the moment, but yeah, it's sort of a different vibe to some of this stuff. We really do well, actually. We just got some placements in Superman and Lois, you know, for the US TV, and it's kind of cool. But you know, it's that music that, like, you know, drops in one of these like contemporary TV shows, and it just sounds right. And we didn't go out making music so it could drop into TV shows. We just went out making music that we kind of want to, that is inspired by other bits of our life and music making. Like, I'm like really into, like, you know, people like Danger Mouse and Mark Ronson and things, because they get the whole sort of like, you know, modern vintage like awesomeness, like Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys and things and stuff. This actually, he used to own this guitar.
Oh my goodness. You've got a piece of music history. Well, you've got lots of pieces of music history in your house.
No. I also figured that I would just like invest any spare money in guitars, because like that they're going to do better than any other investment that I could ever make. So I'll just blow it on nice instruments.
Amazing. Okay, so that's great. So Shaker Neon. So we should be looking forward to maybe some.
Look out for it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's cool. It's a lot of fun, that band.
I put it on last night as I was kind of just preparing and, you know, organizing my questions, and I was like, okay, this guy's going to be super fun to talk to.
Good.
So how can I know that you're on Instagram. What else can we share with our Beyond Sanditon group about where to find you on social media? Any upcoming projects you want to tell us about? I mean, you mentioned Superman and Lois, and of course.
Yeah, well, that's just shaking. But yeah, what's going on? That's quite fun. I tell you should check out my band, The Ticklers. It's like a sort of New Orleans style jazz band as well.
What's it called?
The Ticklers.
The Ticklers?
The Ticklers, the Ticklersofficial.com. Yeah.
Okay, The Ticklers
so
Official.
We play all the time, but that, you know, and then what else is coming up? Check out all the Law and Order stuff. You know, it's really cool. So especially, you know, the organized crime stuff. Season 3, I think, is just finished. So you can probably watch the whole thing in a night.
Yeah,
you have 22 hours.
Yeah, I saw that finished because I was looking up Ruth Barrett, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
She's massively diverse. But interestingly, it's you'd understand it. You'd be thinking, okay, I get it. The musically, it's nothing. Stylistically, it's nothing like Sanditon, but it's not. You get it, because the emotional pull and the emotional like power of it's got it in common. But otherwise, check out Big Beast on Apple TV. It came out like a week ago, although like I think the last episode came out 2 weeks ago, and that's got loads of Ruth's music, some of my music, and some of another writer, Claudio's music, and it's just a really amazing watch. Tom Hiddleston narrating.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's really, really cool, and they are super personal stories about all these titans of the natural world. So yeah, that's really cool. There's another show that I wrote some music for called No Escape, which is on Paramount Plus. So, but that's a really cool. It's like a boat thriller.
Yeah, did you post the picture? It's like the actress with like just her eyes.
Yeah, it looks like she's about to have her legs nobbled off by a shark or something. But it's got nothing to do with sharks.
Nothing to do with sharks. Okay, well that's good.
Nothing to do with sharks. Yeah. So that's a really cool watch actually. And then otherwise, just gigging a bit over the summer, and then trying to do some new Shake a Neon when we have sort of little downtime.
That's awesome. Well, and hopefully our goal is that we get more Sanditon, and then you can come back and Ruth can come back and get us more good music.
Absolutely.
So we're working hard on it. And again, thank you so much. I assume it's like almost 10 p.m. where you are. So, and you've got kiddos. So thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really
pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too, Dom.
Okay. All the best.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of today.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Bye.